my name is Kindezi Interview, and today I have the privilege of interviewing my father. Since I started taking an African American Studies class titled The Black Family, I've come to learn and understand a lot of great concepts and characteristics of the Black family. One of my personal favorites, and one that I feel as though is very important, is the idea of the Kindezi system. The Kindezi system refers to a family structure that promotes stability and the role of the community in the upbringing of the child. Here in the States, things aren't directly correspondent to the way that they are in Africa. However, we do have a lot of similarities. My father is here today to discuss his upbringing and draw correlations to the similarities of this type of system and the type of system that he grew up in. So, here's my father, Dr. Walter Wren. First, I wanted to touch on the fact that he is a part of a legacy. He is Dr. Walter Wren III, which means that his father and grandfather both had that last name. So to you, how important is it being a part of a legacy, and what role did that play in part in your life?
Well, it played a pretty important role. My grandfather was Reverend Walter Franklin Wren Sr. My father was Walter Franklin Wren Jr., and I'm Walter Franklin Wren III. When you first get that name, it's not really significant, but as you age and you find that you come from somewhere, and these people played important roles in not only their own life but in your life, then the name becomes important for you, and you take a little bit of pride in it, being the third generation of a family. In addition to that, I also found out as I grew up that my great-grandfather was also a minister, Reverend Anthony Wren. So the name Wren gets passed down as well as the Walter.
Right, the heritage, the culture. Right. So Kindezi is a family structure that isn't considered to be broken. You grew up being raised by both your parents, which would be considered also not a broken home. Do you feel as though that you have some advantages of having that as opposed to being a part of a broken home?
Yes, I had big advantages. First of all, both my parents, both born in 1912, were college graduates. My father was a graduate of Tennessee State University. He initially taught history at a high school in my hometown of Helena, Arkansas. My mother was a graduate of Arkansas A&M and was a school teacher. So right away in our family. Now, as we grew up, because of and I was born in 1940, because of discrimination and poverty, even though my father started working for the government in 1941, being the first black hired by the Social Security Administration, and we moved to Baltimore. But growing up in that type of environment, we also, for 5 years while I lived in Pittsburgh, lived in a project. So in Baltimore, we lived in a tenement, and walk-up tenement, and in Pittsburgh, we lived in the projects. Now, it was low-income projects. Now, in a project, there are many types of family structures, some with intact families, and some with single-parent families.
Right.
There were more back then intact families than there were single-parent families. Right? Having a structure like we had, okay, I already knew when I worked with the kindergarten, I was going to college,
right,
because what we went on inside of the home, and one brother and one sister, and what went on inside of the home was something that was already preparing us for the future based upon the legacy of the past. So I had an advantage, and even when I moved to Philadelphia, I had an advantage over many families that weren't intact, because there were the dynamics of being single parents. Some men, by the way, I grew up where male was a parent, single parent, as well as females were single parents. So I always felt that I had an advantage over those because I had an intact family. And many kids, because I had an intact family, many of my friends loved to come to my house because they saw this family structure. And because of the family structure, of course, there were a lot of rules. And growing up in a Christian home, we were very strong. We went to church every Sunday, all day. No sports, nothing else but church on a Sunday. So the structure was there.
Right. So he brings up a really valid point of, how having two parents brings a great sense of stability, which gives you that throughout your life. He also brought up the fact that people wanted to come to his house, which makes me think about the Kindezi system again as far as the community playing a part in the role. We had a concept that talked about, quote, babysitting and how the community helped raise children. Do you think that in your day the community played a part in your upbringing?
Oh yes. By the way, let me go back to Arkansas because in the early South among blacks, because a lot of this history has been lost. Early on, blacks considered themselves like a family. Okay, so there were always rules. Elders were respected. Okay, you were afraid to do something around the corner from your house because the elder who saw you, number one, they would correct you, but they would also tell your parents. So you had that going on, that dynamic to help keep you in order. And then the other thing is because you respected your elders, you know, if your neighbor came home and they were coming from the store, you would naturally help them with the groceries. In my particular block where I grew up in Philadelphia on Fraser Street, when it snowed, I shoveled everybody's walk. Now, I was hoping they would give me a tip, but by the same token, they didn't have to. Right. It was part of the responsibility we had as children growing up in the neighborhood. Now, in the South, if a person went to 8th grade, they felt obligated to teach up to what they learned to people coming beyond them, and also to encourage people to go further. So I come from a small town in Helton, Arkansas, where even after they had a Helton Friends Club, where people, even after they became grown and moved away, donated money for scholarships so that kids in their town, who went to what we call Eliza Miller High School, which was the black high school there, to encourage them to go to college. Okay, so I have a cousin that's a doctor. You know, as a result, I have the person who operated on Randall Cunningham's knee in California, an orthopedic surgeon, came from my hometown. And all this benefited because we believe in that community, just like Africa, where it takes a village to raise a child.
Right.
And that's part of the problem we have today.
Right. That is definitely part of the problem that we have today. The fact that these types of communities are lacking. These are things that we do not have. Helping elders are things that people don't even think to do. So I think that that's really important. My last question is, being a part of such a great family, what are a few things that you think make up a stable black family?
Well, to me, that's one of the biggest problems we have as a race today, is that we have forgotten that how important a family is, okay? A father, a mother, and children. Because, you know, you have to have, my family, when I look at my family, I think of the roots that we come from. You know, you have a root and you come from somewhere, and then when you have a reunion, this kind of enforces where your family came from and the accomplishments that you got together as a family. But you can point to a father, you can point to a mother, all having, as they say, the same bloodline. So we have, you know, the 3 children, the same parents. So that's a sense of belonging, togetherness, if you will. And then you have the idea that it started stable before you ever got here. So my father and mother both grew up in a small town. The families knew each other. Okay, so they grew up together. They somehow, when they got together and got married, okay, something must have happened in the family before I ever got there, that the roles were defined. That my father was the head of the house. There was no question about that. That my mother was his extension was no question, because it was as if she knew. So you couldn't play parents against each other, because she was a direct extension of whatever the rules were that went on in the house, they were enforced. Right. Okay, so it was passed on to me. For instance, I grew up in a structure where my sister, who was a year older than I am, could not go anywhere without me. She couldn't go to social function or anything without me. It also, by the way, and this is a little bit of digression, went to the point when she got ready to get married, she also, not in addition to asking my father permission, asked me. And I went and talked to her future husband, as her older brother, as a brother, although I'm younger. So the structure there, protecting each other and then passing on. And then I had a younger brother, of course, who I also protected, you know, as they grew up. So the thing is that whole family structure, we were taught that we were not to engage in any kind of conflict with each other, physical confrontations. And it was just forbidden, because being brothers and sisters, we had an obligation to each other to be this loving family. So if there were certain rules in the family. It was interesting. I knew what time we were going to have dinner. It was when my father came home in the evening. All right. Now we got the bulletin delivered every day. My father didn't read the sports page, but that newspaper stayed folded till he came in, opened the newspaper, and handed me the sports page to read. I couldn't just open that sports page and read it. Okay. Also, in addition to that, the sun could not catch me in the street. When the sun went down, then that meant that I had to be in the house. Plain and simple. It wasn't a question, you know. And unfortunately, when my father promised something, it happened. So, you know, so these were the structures. Now, interesting enough how it passed on to my friends. If you were sitting down, my father came downstairs, don't get up, hello, Mr. Rand. If you had a hat on, he'd ask you what you're doing with your hat on. All right? But people learn how to do that. The rules, no one allowed in the house when no parent was home, strictly enforced. And by the way, I had a next door neighbor, Mrs. Boyd, that saw everything. You know, so it was something that was enforced. So the rules of the house were followed, and the structure, you know, what was going on. My father worked many jobs in addition to his professional job he had in the daytime with the Social Security Administration. He worked other jobs. He parked cars, and that showed me that any job, no matter what, you know, as long as not his job was important. And then he also sold real estate. So the thing is, but you could always find him because he would leave a number. When he was leaving, he would tell my mother where he was going. And then when he left that particular place, if he was going somewhere else, he would leave a number there so they could trace him. So if anything happened or he was needed, then he would be able to be found. So the whole family structure and what went on in the family. On Sundays, we went to church. We got up, my father, my sister, my brother, we went to Sunday school. My mother would join us at church. Sunday was the day my mother didn't work. She didn't cook. My father did all the cooking on Sundays. That was his day, you know, for giving my mother relief from her duties during the week. Where we sat at the table, how we got served, all structured, all structured. So it was a very structured environment that grew up with rules, okay, and then with support. All through my life, there was never a time when my parents didn't support me, or wouldn't support me. Right. They supported me both financially and spiritually. You know, when things may have been happening in my life that was being distracted, for some reason they would sense that, and I would get a call or a letter or something that something was going on. So it was a very, very, I think, important structure. And we have an extended family, if you will. From going to family reunions, you get that extended family. You get this whole sense of what that meant as a family and how prideful the family was, you know, and how together the family is. You know, it's interesting. You go to these people you don't know, and maybe 2 or 3rd generations, and you get together and you feel like family.
Right.
So it's very important in the family. I think this is the biggest thing happening in our society today, is we just don't have the family concept or the family structure. It starts with a mother and father, you know, and it may be, some people when they look at the Bible, they may turn them off, but it says you leave your father and your mother come together before becoming one flesh. Well, you become that one flesh before you have children. You know, and then the family is, right, so the family, 2 people come together, then they have a child, that structure. So you have goals and things. And my brother, by the way, a good example, my brother when he was 16 said he was going to drop out of school. My mother said, oh, no, you're not. You're going to graduate from high school, period. You know, this is, you know, back in the 50s, let's say. So my brother did graduate from high school. But because of my father's connection, he had him in Tennessee State, and he also, you know, went on to graduate from college as well. So, and he has 2 children, they graduated from college. So it's important that legacy continues and that you know where you came from. So it gives you a sense of who you belong to, that you do belong to something. And we need to learn about that as a greater people, that we belong to this family. And we need to start looking at things that will strengthen the family and therefore strengthen us as a people. So that the village, the concept from Africa, raises, the village raises a child. So the little kid who looks up at this thing, and you say, who's it? Oh, that's my father. But that's not his blood father. But because that role that this person plays, he has the authority of a father. So that role is defined. Just like the person would have as a mother, the authority of the mother, and how those roles defined. So that village gets raised, and everyone's looking out for each other's welfare and well-being. And as I said, growing up, we respected our elders. We revered the people who were there. And just like in Africa, they revere their elders.
Right.
You know, and it helps. And by the way, having studied martial arts under Orientals, a Korean master, they revere their elders. They believe in the family. And if you look at what's going on in our city, even, and you'll see that these people have families.
Right.
So they may just be at a corner store, but it's a family. It's still a concept. They come here and it becomes important that there's a family. So we need to see that the family structure is important for all of us if we're going to develop.
So, of course, me and my father, we discuss these types of things all the time. I always tell people that I was privileged growing up. I did have the privilege of having both of my parents, and I never asked him, like direct questions like this for a class project, but it was always things that was always lingering. Because he went to school, I knew that was something that I not only had to do, but it was something that I wanted to do because I saw how successful he was, how amazing he treated my mother. I always felt like that was something that I had to look forward into. The guy I dated, I was always worried about the type of guy I dated because I knew that I had to bring him home. I never knew how important this type of system was because it was always something that I had. Now that I've gotten older and I see that a lot of people lack, it's something that hopefully I'll be able to give to my family and hopefully I'll be able to spread to other people. So I want to thank my dad for coming and helping me with this project. When I thought about who I would get, it wasn't a second thought. I knew he would be great for it. So I hope that you all enjoyed this. I hope that you all can take something from it. And I also hope that you guys can grow and that you can have a really strong family structure. So thank you very much.